Arsenal ended their 14-year wait to reach a Champions League final against FC Porto thanks to David Raya's heroics in that penalty shootout at the Emirates. And now they've got a considerable break before what many are labelling their biggest Premier League game in 2 decades against Manchester City, March the 31st at the Etihad, as they go hell for leather to secure their first Premier League title in 20 years. I am joined by Sunsport football correspondent Tom Barclay to have a look in a bit more detail, Tom, at Arsenal's run in between now and the end of the season. Obviously, joyous scenes at the Emirates when they got past Porto, and then this game against Man City's next, international break in between, obviously. But March the 31st at the Etihad, the biggest game in 20 years in the Premier League for Arsenal. True or false?
I think true. It's got to be up there. They definitely look like they're in amongst it with City and Liverpool. They've been fantastic, particularly in this recent few months. They had that little wobble sort of around the Christmas period, and you sort of thought, the wheels coming off, as they sort of did last season towards the back end of the season. But they had a break. They went to Dubai. They've collected their thoughts. They've thought everything through, and suddenly they're looking like they're really firing on all cylinders. And now going into the City game, they've got another break. They're not going to go away or anything, because obviously the international break's coming up where most of the players will be off doing their thing. But it gives them, and Mikel Arteta in particular, a bit more time to sort of plot and plan ahead of what is going to be one of the most tasty games of the season.
Absolutely. We'll look at Arsenal's run-in a bit more detail in a little while, particularly some of those key away games that they've got against big-time, old-school rivals who will be desperate to do anything they can to stop Arsenal from winning the league. But just to have a look at the Champions League, first of all, obviously a great story, wonderful scenes at the Emirates, a bit nervy, but David Raya coming up clutch for them when it mattered in the penalty shootout. But what do you feel that with that, Arsenal out the FA Cup, out the League Cup as well, do you feel that it may have actually been a blessing in disguise if they'd gone out, because they would have been fully focused on the Premier League, with Liverpool and City both still in Europe as well, and the FA Cup? Do you feel like that might have actually weirdly helped them?
I see what you say, that just from a purely fixture congestion point of view, but I disagree. Having watched the game last night, there was a nervousness going to that extra time and then obviously into penalties. And to get through that moment, win that penalty shootout against a really stubborn Porto team who were not easy to knock over, clearly from the two legs, I think will go a long, long way to building confidence and giving a load of self-belief into the last eight for the first time in 14 years. Just another sort of goal ticked off pretty much in this Mikel Arteta revolution that's been happening ever since he took over, to be honest. And I expect, particularly with the squad sort of coming back together now in terms of players coming to full fitness and all the options he's got, that will only kick him on further. Yeah,
sort of that winning mentality once that gets in your bones, which it hasn't been at Arsenal for quite a long time before Arteta, certainly not to the levels we're seeing at the moment. So, look, I mean, Tom, there's a few different factors to consider as far as the Premier League run-in goes. All the teams, 10 games left, of course. Arsenal, City and Liverpool have each got 6 games to play against teams in the top half of the Premier League. 5 of those 6 for Arsenal are away from home, just 3 of those for Liverpool and just 2 for Manchester City. There's the injuries, which we'll look at in a minute as well, and some of those key opponents. Arsenal still got Tottenham, Manchester United and Chelsea to play, all before the season finishes. What one do you want to look at first? What do you think is going to play the biggest factor? And we'll dive into that in a bit of detail.
Well, let's come on to the run-in towards the end. I do think that is probably one of the biggest obstacles that Arsenal are facing. I think they do have the toughest run-in. But from a more positive point of view, as I alluded to a minute ago, with all the players coming back to full fitness, Arteta's now got so many options, particularly at the back. Tomiyasu coming back now and looks like he's going to sign a new contract soon. That's a big boost. He's such a versatile player and a really well-liked player in the dressing room. Zinchenko came off the bench last night, but to be honest, would you even start him at the moment? Because Jakub Kiwior is slotted in at left-back, despite being more of a centre-back. In fact,
Ben White syndrome.
Ben White, but also Ben White. I mean, he was the one who set up the 2 goals against Brentford. He suddenly got a great delivery on him. They've gone for a bit more of a Pep Guardiola sort of approach with 4 centre-backs playing at the back. But they're looking really, really solid. And when Zinchenko came on in extra time against Porto, he played in more of a sort of midfield role because they were trying to push for that winner, which we know he can do. He can play that sort of inverted role, and he's got that ability. He plays midfield often for Ukraine anyway. But what I like about the Arsenal squad at the moment is, as I said, so many different ways to skin a cat for Arteta at the moment. Whatever the game is needing, he can sort of look to his bench and try and change it a different way. And I think one player we shouldn't overlook is Jorginho. He's someone who's been there and done it. When he signed last January, along with Leandro Trossard, which at the time, you might remember, people were saying that Arsenal maybe had not scrimped, but Mudryk was the one, their main target. Chelsea went and signed him
for 88 million.
Exactly.
Quid,
I mean, understandable, particularly when you look on how he's played since, although he's had a bit of an upturn of late. And they were talking about Declan Rice at the time, who they eventually did get, and he is the big factor, let's be honest, behind this. But Jorginho, whilst he hasn't been a sort of superstar signing, I think he started the last 3 games, he's brought in that sort of nous, that experience. Martin Odegaard's the captain, but Jorginho is almost like the unofficial one who's been sort of organising, and it's a young team.
Vast experience of winning as well.
Absolutely, and you forget how young this team is. I mean, Bukayo Saka's been doing it for so long that he is a senior pro, but that doesn't discount his actual age, which is relatively young. But Jorginho at 32 is a veteran, relative veteran in this team, and I think that's helped the team as well. And he's someone that Arteta, obviously a former midfielder himself, can sort of look to as someone who can help organise his team. And it sounds like he's been brought in, particularly at the moment, into these games as a way of trying to navigate Arsenal through this sort of pressure point of the season. The only caveat I would say to all that is, yes, we are at a pressure point, but we're not at the pressure point of the season yet. This is where it all kind of went wrong last season.
Yeah.
If anything, at this point in the season last year, they actually were 2 points better off than they were having played a game fewer, because we know how well they did. And then the collapse happened. So what we want to see...
That's when the bottle job tag got attributed to them, didn't it? Or it started from that point.
And you can see why. But what we need to see from here is a newfound resilience, which Jorginho might help to bring. Declan Rice definitely seems like he's bringing that as well, to get Arsenal to be able to sustain it across the whole season.
This is the crunch point, isn't it? Because like you say, up until now, on paper, they've done, if anything, a smidgen worse than they did last year. But this is when the mentality of the whole thing kicks in, isn't it? And it's one of those things. What do you expect Arsenal players and Arteta to say, other than, we need to learn from last season? You can say that all you like, can't you? But this is crunch time, particularly now they're only in 2 competitions. And these are the games and the moments and the times that matter. But you mentioned that run-in. Just for anyone wondering, it's Manchester City away, the big game that we've spoken about already. Luton at home, Brighton away, Villa at home, Wolves away, Spurs away, Bournemouth at home, Man United away, Everton at home, and then Chelsea at home. Those 2 there that I've mentioned, Spurs and Manchester United, they're going to be cauldrons of noise filled with fans who are going to want anything other than Arsenal to win the title. Bit of a difficult one for Manchester United fans, I suppose, because picking between Liverpool, Arsenal and City, not their ideal. But do you sort of sense anything other than those games there that are going to be the main sticking points, or what do you see as worries for Arsenal, given that they've got at least 2 more Champions League games coming up?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that fixture list, I mean, Aston Villa have had a fantastic season. Brighton, you never know what you're going to get from them, and they've had good results against Arsenal in the past. Wolves have been able to turn over a lot of different teams this season. So, as is the Premier League these days, every game is cliche, but every game is difficult. But yeah, you're totally right. I mean, Tottenham away, Spurs obviously a team that I cover on a regular basis. When they're firing like they were against Aston Villa with that 4-0 victory, they can beat anyone. They really can. And remember, Tottenham didn't lose at the Emirates earlier this season. That was very early on in the Ange Postecoglou era. He's had more time to sort of implement his methods. Spurs themselves having had their own injury problems this season, are starting to get all their sort of full complement of players together. So that one is going to be very tough. Man United, with the way they sort of play a counter-attacking style, in the past at Old Trafford have had some success against this Arsenal team. But if you're going to go and win the league, you've got to go and win these games. I mean, really for me, and we don't want to sort of call it after the next game, but Man City away, when you look at City's run-in, which I think you can explain a little bit more in detail, it is a lot more favourable than Arsenal. And if they can go and beat Arsenal at home in the next game, it already looks like a difficult sort of amount of points to sort of overturn, given what's going to come afterwards for City and the fact that they've got the experience of being there and doing it before.
Do you sort of feel like you said already, that this game for Arsenal at the Etihad is really do or die for them and could genuinely put them in a position? Do you think if they do win, or even if they get a draw at City, right, that will still keep them 1 point above them if they draw, 4, if they get the win? Do you think if they do manage to win or even get a draw, do you think it's theirs to lose then, or can you still see them dropping enough points for City to regain the ground on them?
Kind of both, really. It is theirs to lose if they go and pull off an amazing result like that. I mean, we talked about what the Porto victory can do for their confidence. I mean, imagine going to win at the Etihad, what that can do. Arteta against his former mentor, Pep Guardiola. I mean, that would just be an incredible thing to happen at this stage of the season. One thing doing it in September, but to do it at this when we're sort of not quite in the final furlong, but we're rounding around the corner, to add a bit of Cheltenham sort of analogy into it. They're not far away. That would be huge. And 4 points is not nothing. And you look at those fixtures to come after that, if they can sort of keep their heads above water, then yes. But at the same time, to the second point of your question, this is Man City. They always can come back. They always generally do. Given
what you know, all of the nuances that we've discovered, changing factors from now until the end of the season, how do you see it going? Who's winning the league?
Well, I think first of all, it's exciting that it genuinely seems like a 3-horse race. I mean, when was the last time we had that? I honestly can't remember. I mean, but having said that, it's one thing saying it now. If we're still the 3-horse race with sort of 6 games to go, then that's when we know it really is a genuine sort of 3 teams
on the last
into
day
it.
of the season.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't quite like that at that point. I still have to go with City. I think they've got the best players, they've got the best manager, they've got the winning mentality, they've got the experience of doing it. But if anyone is going to break them and break that sort of stranglehold they've got on the Premier League, they're going to have to reach a new level that they hadn't before. Liverpool have done it before, to be fair to them. They are hampered by injuries, not that it seems to really be hampering them too much at the moment.
You feel like that will catch up with them shortly, though?
I don't know. I mean, I've watched nothing. I was at the Carabao Cup final against Chelsea, and yes, it was sort of embarrassing from Chelsea point of view, given the sort of relative lack of experience for Liverpool. But you can't underestimate the sort of collegiate atmosphere that Liverpool have in that dressing room now, particularly with Jurgen Klopp. Sort of, we all know he's leaving at the end of the season, and then the sort of motivating factor that brings in. And they will get some of those players back before the end of the season. So I wouldn't rule them out. I mean, Arsenal feels like they have the most to do, but that doesn't mean they can't do it.
Absolutely. Tom Barclay there giving his thoughts on all things Arsenal ahead of what could be their biggest 10-game period, domestically certainly, for 2 decades. But as everyone seems to think, me included, at this stage, Arsenal loads to do. Although exciting as it is, everyone's still backing City on the quiet at the moment. However, big 2 months for Arsenal. It could be the most historic of the modern era.